In the word of Ecclesiastes, a season is set for everything, a time for every experience under heaven, a time for laughing and a time for weeping, a time for birthing and a time for dying, a time for speaking and a time for silence, a time for seeking and a time for losing. The time of mourning is a complicated time filled with many emotions and memories, both bitter and sweet. That's why we begin our service with the recitation of psalms and prayers, thus linking Sophia's life with the 3,000-year-old tradition of the people Israel and the eternity of God. Esayin el harim, mehayin yavo ezri, ezri mehim Adonai, ose shamayim v'haaretz, al yiten lamot raglecha, al yanom shomrecha, hinei lo yanom v'lo yishan, shomer Yisrael, Adonai shomerecha, Adonai tzilcha, alayat yeminecha, Yomam Hashemesh lo yakekha, ve'yareach balayla, Adonai shmorecha mikol ra, yishmor et nafshecha, Adonai shmor et tzedcha uvahecha, me'ata ve'ad olam. 121 псалм. «Возвожу очи мои горам, откуда придет помощь моя? Помощь моя от Господа, сотворившего небо и землю. Не даст он поколебаться ноге твоей, не воздремлет хранящий тебя, не дремлет и не спит хранящий Израиля. Господь, хранитель твой, Господь, сень твоя с правой руки твоей. Днем солнце не поразит тебя, ни луна ночью. Господь сохранит тебя от всякого зла, сохранит душу твою, Господь. Господь теперь будет охранять выхождение твое и вхождение твое отныне и вовек». Dear Alex and Claudia, Alexei, Marcy, Roman, Angela, Alexa, Conan, Cindy, Era and Brandon, Allison and Rick, Bella and Boris, Yana, Elliot, Michelle, and Brendan. Big family. Dear relatives and friends, we gathered here today to mourn the death of Sofia Beloshevsky. We are saddened, but we gathered here today not only to mourn the loss of Sofia, but also to celebrate her life and offer our memories and good words in her memory. Sofia Beloshevsky was born in Odessa in 1939. Her father was killed at the start of the Great Patriotic War, so Sofia practically didn't know her father. During the war, her mother Chaya and Sofia were evacuated in Uzbekistan, in city of Tashkent. In 1944, her mother Chaya married a second time, and soon Alex was born. Sofia and you, Alex, you were extremely close all your life. You loved each other and deeply cared for each other, and we express our deepest condolences to you today. In 1950, Chaya's second husband died, and the whole family moved to a little town outside Moscow. But in 1955, her mother Chaya dies. And they moved back to Odessa in 1956, where Sofia met her future husband, Vladimir. They married the following year in 1957. Vladimir was 7 years older, but it didn't matter. They fell in love. They were truly soulmates. Sofia was very young, only 18 years old, but she was very strong and very determined to build her own family. In 1958, son Arkady was born, and Sofia became a mother at the age of 19 years only. She loved Arkady as only a Jewish mother can love. She doted over him. In Odessa, Sofia and Vladimir worked together at the jewelry factory, and later, Sofia worked as a director of the shoe store. In 1977, Sofia and Vladimir, together with their son Arkady, emigrated from the former Soviet Union to America. They came here, they came to Cleveland, and the reason for their emigration was their desire to protect son Arkady from being drafted into the Soviet army. Sofia, immediately after arrival, went to work at the factory, the same factory where worked her niece Bella. Sofia, those very first years here in Cleveland, she worked many jobs, and she tried very hard to help her family to settle in a new country. She learned English language, and she could freely communicate. Her husband, Vladimir, couldn't learn English as well, so Sofia, for many years, she took the care of all the family affairs here in America. Later, Sofia found a job at the bank, and she started her professional career at the bank as a teller. But she was a very good worker, and she moved up, ending her professional career in a managerial position. She worked at the Key Bank for almost 25 years until her retirement. And after her retirement in 2005, Sofia and Vladimir moved to Florida, to Longboat Key. They hoped for the nice retirement, but unfortunately that very same year, Vladimir had a triple bypass surgery. And after the surgery, his health continued steadily to decline. So Sofia cared for him until his last day. She loved him dearly, and it was her new mission to prolong Vladimir's life as long as possible. Those last year, Vladimir was hospitalized several times, and Sofia practically lived with him in a hospital room. In 2012, Sofia was diagnosed with the breast cancer. So at the same time, caring for her husband, she went through her own chemotherapy and continued to care for Vladimir. She was very strong and very determined, and she was absolutely she didn't think about herself. She continued to think about her husband and cared for him. Cindy, when you married Arkady, Sofia accepted you in a family like her own daughter, and she opened her heart for you. She was a good-hearted woman. She was very friendly, extremely friendly to people, and she had many friends as a result of her good nature. As one example of her really goodness and just how valued she was by her friends. I can tell you this example. When she was going through the treatment, through the cancer treatment in Florida, that her oncologist in Florida became her best friend. And after the treatment, that doctor offered her to stay with her, that she could take care of her. And she made many good friends who cared for her, who communicated with her until the very, very last day. As a result of her upbringing, she was raised and shaped by many families. So as a result of that very interesting life experience, the family, her own family, was everything for her. She loved her entire family, and it was a big family. Many nieces, grandnieces, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. So that is why her family was everything for her, because she was raised by the many families. So she wanted to pay back all that love and care that she received when she was growing up. And husband, son, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, and all her relatives meant so much to her. She could never say no to you, Alexei and Roman. She was ready to do everything for you. And she loved you absolutely unconditionally. And of course, being a Jewish grandmother, she always tried to buy you a gift or to feed you. She had a pride in her eyes, as you told me, when she just simply looked at you. And you called her, she had a nickname. Her nickname was Luba, which means love in Russian. So you called her Luba, not whatever name, Baba Sofia, I don't know how else you could call her. She was infinitely happy when you got engaged and started your own families. And she was truly overwhelmed with joy and happiness to see her great-grandchildren. Alex and Claudia, you told me that your own daughter, Larissa, named her own daughter under Sofia because they were so close to each other and she loved her so much. When Sofia was young, she was a gorgeous woman. She always took a good care of herself. She loved the good clothes and high heels. She loved stilettos. Her hair was always nice. And Sofia loved good food and good company. She loved life, and she wanted to live to the fullest. And Claudia, you told me that your friend Emma loved her. They were not related at all, but they built a relationship, they built a friendship, and that friendship was very precious to Emma, and she tried to spend as much time as possible with Sofia, especially those last years when she was sick. So as I said, it is a sad day today that we say our final goodbye to Sofia Beloshevsky. She will be joining her beloved husband Vladimir and son Arkady, and she lived with the good name, and she died with the good name. Tehi nishmata tzorora b'tzror chaim, may her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. I would like to invite Era, grandniece, who will share her memories of Sofia.
Sofia had a non-biological brother, which was my grandfather, Misha. And when he died 5 years ago, she and I became very close. She filled a very big void for me, and I feel so empty right now. but I grew to love her more than I could ever imagine. She was a spectacular person, full of life and love. But I can't do this justice talking about her. Larissa, Klava and Eilik's daughter, can't be here, and she wrote a eulogy, and her words are just truly beautiful, and she asked me to read them on her behalf. And I will say every word she wrote is really true. When Sofia was 6 years old, she was smuggled in the overhead luggage compartment of a train from Odessa, Ukraine to Tashkent, Uzbekistan by her grandmother. She had been living with Babushka Betya for some time and was now going to be reunited with her mother Clara. She did not make a sound on that train ride. She was a stowaway. She kept herself occupied by imagining it to be a great adventure, a secret journey to a magical place. Her life, that journey, was one of a stowaway, bound to a journey she did not choose, but was determined to survive on her own terms. She was always hidden, sometimes crushed and trapped, but always traveling through a magical landscape in her own mind. That singular talent of escape through imagination, through dreams, through a powerful insight is what made her such a force of life. It is impossible for me to imagine that she is gone. She was always bigger than life and somehow always removed just a bit from it as well. She loved to tell stories. I loved to listen to her stories. I grew up listening to them as she and her late husband cooked together. Cooking for them was a form of jousting. Each pinch of salt or dash of pepper was an argument of epic proportions. They would scream and yell at one another in several languages at once. They would curse in Yiddish and Russian and even English, all over how long to cook the potatoes. Somewhere during all this yelling and clanking of dishes, there were stories. She would tell one part, and he would fill in the gaps. You didn't like Barbie, she would ask me, because I was the only person anyone knew who absolutely loathed Barbie dolls. You don't know a good toy. I did not have a Barbie not to like. I had an old bottle wrapped in a blanket that my grandmother made for me. That was my doll, so you should like Barbies. That is how she would tell me something intimate. It was through sheer accident of correcting me that a morsel of something painful or beautiful would slip out. She was very dramatic, but very guarded. She had good reason to be closed to the world that gave her so much pain. The day she arrived in Tashkent after that long journey, her very pregnant mother, little brother, and stepfather were waiting for her. She had never met her stepfather or her little brother, my father, which is Alex, before. Their joy would be cut short. That night, my grandfather fell ill and was dead the next day. My aunt, father, their mother, and grandmother were back on a train heading back to Odessa. During the train ride, their mother went into preterm labor, giving birth to stillborn twins. I didn't know that. Their mother never recovered. She was bedridden for the next few years, finally dying at 32, leaving behind Sofia and my father. They were now orphans. The night my mother died, I ran from everyone. I did not want anyone to see me crying. It was winter. It was cold and snowing in Odessa. I ran out in my nightgown, no shoes. I ran and ran all night, my aunt once told me over a plate of fish and tomato sauce. This sort of fell out of her because we were talking about nightgowns and how chilly they are to sleep in. By accident, I had seen into the compartment and the pain. Many years later, she would run in her mind after the death of her only child, her son Arkady. Sofia's husband, Vova, had been very ill when news came that Arkady had died at a mere 53. Sofia was afraid that the news would kill... She was afraid that the news would kill a very weak Vova, so for months she grieved in private, running outside to cry, sitting in her car crying, running to a store on some pretext in order to have a simple cry. She held this grief alone to protect him. I would beg her to tell him so that she did not have to carry the burden alone. He will come to it himself. He will understand. I had no idea how one comes to the understanding that their child is dead without anyone telling them, but she was right. One day he knew. He just knew. It was some magical world they lived in where there were signs and omens and foretellings. People knew things or came to know things. Sofia was strikingly beautiful, fiercely intelligent, loyal to her friends and family beyond measure. She was funny without meaning to be. I don't think it is a good idea to change your pantyhose while you are driving, she happened to mention to me during a phone call one day. Apparently she had tried this and nearly crashed the car. She was even funnier when she tried. Mostly she laughed at herself. I'm wearing diapers, and so is my great-granddaughter. Can you believe it? She mentioned once, laughing at the strangeness of age and life. When I was younger, people told me I looked like her. They found the resemblance uncanny. But few people knew that we had the same temperament, the same drive toward the magical and dramatic. I inherited from her the ability to feel intensely and to find solace in the magical compartments in my own mind. I never had her strength, though. She was never afraid. She was never discouraged. She was my dearest friend. She was my inspiration. My daughter, Sophie, is named after her and will carry her name now that Sofa's gone. The two Sophies talked quite often on the phone and Skype. My daughter's nearly 5, but she knows how to call people on Skype. This amazed Sofa. The two would gab sometimes. Sofa would watch Sophie do her latest dance creation. When I found out that Sofa had died, I cried. Sophie heard me, so my husband took her out of the room to explain why Mommy was crying. Then Sophie began to cry. She knows that Sofa died, but at her age, she doesn't really understand what death is. Does that mean I can't call her anymore? Sophie asked. We told her that was correct. She could not call her anymore. The next day, I did my usual ritual. I got up, I poured a cup of coffee, sat in my favorite chair, and dialed Sofa for our morning gap. I had forgotten that she was gone. That compartment of magic did not work for me now. Running in my own mind did not work. I was never as strong as her. Sophie walked in and saw me with the phone. Mommy, we can't call Aunt Sophie anymore. I know, I thought. I know. I loved her very deeply, and I will miss her for the rest of my life. I love you, Sofa.
Cindy?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. It was 35 years ago that the Beloshevskys welcomed me into their life. Sofia and Vladimir were always very supportive of me, even through the difficult times that Arkady and I had. And they brought me much comfort when it was our time to divorce. The boys and I called them Luba and Detta. They were so happy to have Roman and Alexei to be grandparents. They wanted to see their grandsons, and I wanted my sons to know their grandparents, so we kept in touch often. The boys went on Saturdays where Sofia and Vladimir watched them, and then after we would have dinner together. They went to their school events and sporting events, and this continued on for years. They were also happy to welcome great-grandchildren. And because Alexa is like an old lady, Sofia called her Yentl. Over the years, Sofia and I had our ups and downs, including some pretty serious fights, where we wouldn't talk to each other for months, and sometimes even a couple years. During one of those fights, she said to me, "Don't call me Luba, call me you." I said, okay, but years later, we laughed about that. She would say differently that I was the blame for those fights, but we each shared some of the blame. And I'm not proud of the fights that we had or the difficulty we gave each other. But it is part of our history. And we had these unfortunate times in our relationship, but we always got back together, talking, laughing, and shopping together. In the Catholic faith, you are not to divorce. The bond is meant to be for life. Unfortunately, Arkady and I did divorce, but our bond lives on through our sons and grandchildren. The bond I had with Sofia also continued, and I would have to say it was most unusual for the situation that we had. I think it is a credit to both of us, because it didn't go without challenge, but it continued. She often supported me, and I hope I did the same for her. There are times that I fought with Sofia that I really did like, and those occurred when I slept at her house. For those of you who were lucky enough to stay at the Beloshevsky Hotel, I'm sure you slept on the blow-up mattress. Under strict instruction from Dada, I was allowed to blow it up, but Sofia thought that I didn't know how to make a bed. So she would push me out of the way, put on the bottom sheet, the second bottom sheet, 3 to 4 pillows. Then she would put this big heavy blanket that I thought a dead bear was stuffed in because it was so heavy. And once she put that on you, you couldn't move. Dada would go to bed and she and I would stay up and talk some more. In the morning, I had to wake up before her, quickly get out of the bed, fold up the blanket, fold up the sheets, put the pillows on the couch, and then pull the cap off the bed, walk all over it, get all the air out of it, roll around on it, and then you had to roll it up like a military sleeping bag all before I could even go to the bathroom, because if she heard me doing any of this, it was game over. On the days I was lucky, she would go to the bathroom right after me, and I would sneak everything into her closet, only to be yelled at once she saw that I had put everything away. Then it was on to a 6-course breakfast where she would say to me, "Why are you so fat? You don't eat." Sofia had friends all over the world, and as women often do, we talked about everybody. Not in a nasty, gossipy way. We would just go through the list of people from Germany, Israel, Canada, Chicago, as she would say, California, Florida, and Cleveland. Years after living near these people, they were still good friends and they kept in contact often. Her birthday was nonstop phone calls from all over the world. Through the years, she would update me on the gang and I would update her on my family. She always talked about the people that she worked with, and I can't tell you how many times she brought them pork chops, chicken Kiev, or soup to her coworkers. I know Key Bank smelled like garlic for years. All of her coworkers received gifts from her at Christmas, and when Dada was in the hospital, the gifts went to the nurses and caregivers. This happened every time he was in the hospital. Sofia appreciated the help she received and acknowledged the people who stood by her. Even though she had a lot of heartache, she really loved life and she loved doing things for people. As Larissa talked about when our Katie died, she kept that pain and carried that agony by herself because she wanted to make sure that Dada was strong enough to hear it. She would have done anything not to cause him pain. And she would tell me during that time what a weight it was on her chest, but her love for Dada was ahead of her own sorrow. Although Arcady and I were not in contact for years, I will speak for him and tell you how much he loved his parents. And I know that love carried throughout his life. Sofia was the last person he tried to contact before he died. They were not able to be together much in this life, but they are now together for eternity. In the end, all that matters is our honoring God, who loves us, and being with our family, where there is no more squabbling, and we never have to say goodbye. My sons and I are very lucky to be a part of this family. And to the Russian community, Spasiba Bolshoi. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for always treating me like family. I know Sofia truly loved all of you because family was everything to her. Bella and Yana, she often spoke of how you kept in such close contact with her, and she really loved that. And I can go on with the list of names of every one of you that she cared about and loved, and how special you were to her. Luba, I love you.
I can't believe you're gone. I won't miss our talks, our laughs, and even our tears. But I know I will see you again. May God bless you, Dada, and Arcady, and may he let his perpetual light shine upon you forever.
I'd like to thank you all for being here today. It means a lot to us, and we all appreciate your support. It would be easy to reread what my brother and I wrote for Detta's eulogy, probably because their lives so revolved around each other that it is nearly impossible to extract one from the other. It's difficult to boil down your entire relationship with someone to a few short paragraphs. I could write pages and pages of the 30-odd years my brother and I knew our grandmother. Years of taking us to movies and trips to Toys R Us to pick out a new toy or game, watching Ferdinand the Bull on Betamax, cooking wonderful meals, consistently speaking English around us. It's hard to tell stories of what seemed like inconsequential moments at the time, but turned into fond memories today. It's the little things we remember. Luba was a very strong, prideful woman. For years she stared cancer in the face, and the cancer blinked. She would often go from a round of chemo directly to the grocery store so she could buy food to make lunch for Detta. I would tell my friends that she was a woman made of iron. She didn't have time for cancer's nonsense. She knew who she was and where she came from. 2 months ago, she stood at her husband's grave and tried to tell us of their lives together, and we cut her short, told her there was time for stories later. We were wrong. I know in my heart, though, that if we didn't stop her, she'd still be around today because she wasn't finished talking yet. Detta was the love of her life, but we all came a close second. She was incredibly dedicated to each and every one of us, always had advice for us. She gave freely of her time and resources, making sure that if there was something we needed, we would somehow get it, even in what we now know were her final days. She was an incredibly smart woman. She spoke 4 languages and had an incredible memory, at least when it came to embarrassing stories of your childhood. She was fun to be around. I would tell her stupid, sometimes horrible stories, just to see how long it would take for her to finally laugh and tell me I was crazy. In her years in Florida, she always treated us like royalty visiting. She would force feed us those 6-course meals at 8 a.m. When Alexei proposed to Marcy, he did it on a beach near where they lived. They remember the proposal secondarily, but the real memory was Luba and Detta waiting for them to celebrate with champagne and cheesecake. She always treated my daughter like a queen, and every time she talked on the phone with her, she would tell her that she had a bowl of strawberries waiting for her. Sorry. Whenever I was going through a tough time, she would say, "I always told you, life is like a zebra. There are light stripes and dark, good times and bad. Things will always come together, though." I'm pretty sure she made that up a year ago, but she said she always told us that. I feel that right now we're all in a dark stripe, but in time, a light one will come. Things will come together. 54 days. I'm sure they were among the longest in her life. That's how long it was between Luba and Detta's deaths. On December 14th, they would have celebrated 60 years together. In our eulogy for Detta, my brother and I remarked that he only lived as long as he did so he could spend more time with Luba. In the same light, we can only assume that Luba passed as quickly as she did so she could be with him again. For selfish reasons, we all feel cheated that she's not here with us, but we need to be happy that these two partners are together again. The world was not meant for those two to be apart. Thank you.
Please rise for the memorial prayer. Hail Malei Rachamim, שוכיינה במרמים, המצא מנוחה נכונה, תחת כנפי השכינה, במחלות קדושים ודגרים, כזוהר הרקיע מסגרים, את נשמת סופיה בת קיבה וחיה, שהלכה לעולמה, בגן עדן תחי מנוחתה. הנבא לרחמים, אז תראה בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, ותצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתה, אדוני ונחלתה, ותנוח בשלום על משכבה, ונאמר Amen. O God, exalted and full of compassion, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Sofia Beloshevsky, who has gone to her eternal home. Master of mercy, we ask you, remember all the worthy and righteous deeds that she performed in the land of the living. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. The Lord is her portion. May she rest in peace, and we all say Amen. Please be seated.